This episode of What the Tech is brought to you by Harry's. For guys like you who want a great shave experience at a fraction of what you're paying. Go to harrys.com and get $5 off your first purchase by entering the code WhatTheTech when you check out.
What the Tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Major Aaron. Of course, I'm joined by a very busy and traveling Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good. How are you?
You have been all over the place this past, I want to say 2 weeks? Or the month? The past month.
Yeah, it's a couple weeks.
So you were in San Francisco. You were in Chicago yesterday. Where else did you go?
Pennsylvania before that.
Where was it? Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Going to Vegas.
You're going to Vegas tomorrow.
Tonight.
You're taking a red-eye?
No, just a night flight.
Just a night flight. So I don't know how you're doing it. I mean, in all the years that we've done these shows, I know, sporadically you'll travel, you'll have to go places. Yeah. You obviously go to Europe on vacation, you take those, but I've never.
This is an unusual year.
This is like insane.
Well, I don't know. It comes in spurts, This one is weird because the Microsoft events are back to back. They used to be spread out by a month. I'm going to China at the end of the month, unless that falls apart, which it seems like they're doing everything they can to make fall apart. and I'm actually going to Europe twice this summer as well, which is unusual. So it's kind of just a weird year.
It's a weird year for you. It's weird for me too, Paul. Life is just, in general, weird for me. There's so much to talk about because we did the show last Monday. Yep. Today is Thursday. We're recording the show Thursday, and that's why the show is out late. It'll probably be out within a couple hours because John is a great editor, and he'll have this thing posted. But we missed Build and Ignite. So it's kind of going to be a recap of those things and a discussion about that. But before we go into that, I want to thank our sponsor, and they've been with us for a long time, and that's, there we go, Harry's. As you can see, I got a nice little beard going here. So for me, shaving is not an everyday thing. And I told the story last time we spoke about Harry's, where I always have been buying these same razors from day one. It's these, I don't know, should I say the name, Paul? Should I say the brand of what I've been buying? Think that's a problem? I don't know. Well, they're these, cheapo, very thin, double razors, and I've been using them for, I want to say, 15 years. And they were great until they stopped being great. Literally, one shave and I'm done. I got to throw these things away. So when Harry's came on board and they decided, they want to take us on as an advertiser, and we were going to take them as an advertiser, I started using the Harry's blade. And I was a little skeptical because I don't like using these replacement blade stuff. I like to just get a razor, throw it out when I'm done. I started using this thing and it's phenomenal. And it's lasting me forever. The reason why is because the blades are made in Germany. They're really high-end blades, yada, yada, yada. But here's the great thing about Harry's. You go to harrys.com, use offer code WhatTheTech at checkout, and you get $5 off your first purchase when you use our code. But the thing about this is that you don't have to deal with the hassle of going to the store, having them open it up for you. They're practically treating you like a criminal when you're trying to buy razors. It's the most unpleasant experience to go and buy this stuff. With Harry's, it's at your door. The shipping is free. Shows up there. Pop on a blade, and you're good. And they have a couple of other handles. They have the Winston. They got the Truman. And then they got a couple of holiday ones, and plus also all the accessories you can imagine with them. I've been using my Harry's blade razor since, I guess, December, November, and I can't see myself ever using one of these cheapo blades, and I really don't like these Gillette Fusion type stuff. It's just way too aggressive for my delicate, soft skin, Paul. I have very soft skin. Harrys.com. Use offer code WhatTheTech at checkout. Get $5 off your first purchase. I want to thank Harry's, and I want to thank them personally because I absolutely love their razors. So this is an endorsement from me. Other than being paid to talk about this, I would still talk about it because it's a phenomenal product. Harrys.com, guys. Thank you, Harrys, for supporting What the Tech. Paul, now it's time to talk about let's talk about Build first.
Okay.
I want to know about your experience at Build. Going there, what happened? Anything crazy? Did things go wild for after Build after parties?
Wait, when did we last talk?
Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Monday.
It's been a while.
Last Monday.
Last Monday. Yeah, a week ago.
Oh. Okay. So lots of
a lot. Yeah, that's why I was like,
happened.
I was like, I don't know. I don't even know if I should write notes because there's so much that has happened.
I don't even know how I'm gonna sort of wrap my head around that. Okay, so Build. Build is Microsoft's premier developer show. It was a fantastic show. San Francisco.
Was it better than last year?
Yeah, everything kind of came together this year, not just from the perspective of what Microsoft was doing, but also just like weather and logistics, and it was all pretty great. But as far as the show goes itself, I think obviously the important bit there, the reason it was great was just because this time around it was really focused on Windows 10 across devices, and they just had a much better message this time, a more complete message, but also a better message.
I think that was really cool. I also heard from people that were there, morale was a little higher this year attending this because you kind of got, like you said, you got a clear message of what Windows 10 is going to be, and it's looking quite positive. I mean, the direction that they're headed is looking hopeful and really positive.
Sure. And we, look, you can have questions around certain things. I mean, there was some big announcements around developers being able to port Android apps and iOS apps to Windows 10 universal apps very easily.
And there was a lot of confusion with that too, based on, a lot of link baiting headlines that said iOS apps now on, Windows.
Well, sure. I mean, I honestly, link baiting occurs, but I would say in this case, it's more probable that people just didn't understand what was happening because it is kind of a complex topic. And there are very real questions around whether any of the stuff will ultimately matter. Whether the ability to easily port an Android app or an iOS app to Windows 10 will, materially impact the platform.
I mean, but that's a good question. I mean, how much more work is it currently to port an app or develop an application?
Right. So aside from games, which in some cases can be ported fairly easily between platforms, depending on the, the technologies used and so forth. For a mainstream application, iOS and Android and Windows Phone are completely different. Different programming languages, different developer tools, different SDKs, different capabilities, platform capabilities. And depending on how you write apps and depending on the type of app as well, right? You may use backend services or other things that make it easier, to go from platform to platform. That doing that thing can be difficult. And so in this case, I've known for some time that Microsoft has been working on getting Android apps running on Windows and Windows Phone in particular, I should say, Windows Phone specifically.
With this method, or are we talking to actually?
Not exactly, although these things are of course related, right?
Yeah.
And many people have seen this as sort of a fallback, plan B. Like if everything goes south with Windows Phone, at least you'll be able to run Windows apps on, Android apps on there, and maybe there's a couple of big Android apps that are just necessary that we just don't have on the platform. Maybe that will help out. And so in the days leading up to Build, I had heard that it's coming. And it's funny because a week or so before Build, I was talking to Mary Jo about this topic, and we both agreed amongst ourselves that it did not make sense for Microsoft to announce Android compatibility on Windows at a Microsoft developer show. I mean, this would basically obviate their years of investment in Microsoft technologies.
And I'm sure it would upset those developers that have spent all that time.
Yes.
Developing for them. It's like, hey, guess what, guys? Screw you.
So, but yet I heard from multiple sources, no, they are going to, announce this, something around Android. And so I assumed it was the same thing. It wasn't, in fact. In fact, it was more of a positive developer message, which is basically this. It's a nice message. Again, I don't know how real world, it's going to impact anything, but it is a nice message, which is this. Microsoft recognizes that developers have years of code bases sitting out there, all kinds of work they've done, and that it's not always on Microsoft. It's on Android. It's on iOS in particular in the mobile world. And so they're going to give those developers the tools to leverage that code, bring it into the universal app platform. Maybe the first version you do is just a straight up port. You make the changes you have to make because of the platform differences. And there you go. And you get this app that looks exactly the same. The hope is that over time, what these people will do is improve them with Windows 10 specific capabilities so that the versions on Windows 10, and including phone, will be in some way better. It is true that the Android, these things are not the same. It's very, they sound, porting Android apps to Windows, porting iOS apps to Windows, they sound like I'm talking about the same thing. These are, in fact, completely different technologies.
For each
yeah, with
platform.
different capabilities. Yeah. The Android version is, in fact, very much phone-based. It's not for tablets yet or PCs, only on the phone. The iOS one is for phone and tablet, and obviously for PC as well. There are some things that light up automatically. If you think about you wrote an iPad app or a game or whatever it is, and you bring it to the universal app platform, you make a couple minor changes to make it run properly, whatever. I mean, out of the gate, that thing works with keyboard and mouse. You don't have to do anything to enable that. That's something that maybe is almost certainly not the case, certainly with the mouse on iOS, on an iPad, right? Because those things don't exist there. And so there's that, that small bit is kind of nice.
So when we talk about porting it, we're talking generally for the phone, or are we also talking about?
Depends on which one. So Android is phone only, iOS is whatever, iOS, iPad, phone,
but not for the desktop in any way.
Well, no, it would see. The thing is, they're universal apps that you're creating.
Yeah. So
technically, you could allow those. This could give you a way to push this thing through the Xbox if you wanted to go in that direction. I mean, it's opening up the entire world of Windows 10 devices, except that Android right now is phone. It's very specifically phone. I'm not even sure why that's the case, but it is phone.
So now you're going to also hear the argument where this BlackBerry did this a couple years ago, and it didn't really work out too well for them.
So, well, not exactly. So BlackBerry only did Android apps running on BlackBerry, right? Mm-hmm. Microsoft, you got to remember the Android bit of this is only one small part of what they're doing. They also enabled iOS apps. They're also enabling web apps to be contained in bundles and published as apps that run on top of Windows. They're also enabling desktop apps to be republished by their creators as pseudo universal apps. They're really like a virtualized app v containers, but let's just say store apps that run in, that can be sold, deployed through the store, right? Taken in context with all of the stuff that they're doing, the Android thing is just a little bit of it. If you think about Android apps running on BlackBerry, kind of a Hail Mary pass. If people embrace this, maybe our platform survives and even grows. It's not like that on Windows. This is at least not the bit they've announced so far. So it's not exactly the same.
Yeah, this is interesting. To me, this is less enticing smaller developers. This is more enticing, the large apps that exist out there to push out a Windows Phone app at the same time that they're pushing out iOS and Android. Let's say Kik or WhatsApp or Instagram or, these top tier applications that are existing that people, millions and millions of people are downloading that may not be on their platform. I don't know how much this is going to entice a smaller app developer to develop for Windows Phone, but
yeah,
it's not Microsoft them. It's the big guys that are missing.
Right. I mean, Microsoft has this, the story that they tell, and it's basically, look, today there are going to be 1 billion Windows 10 devices within 2 to 3 years. That's one of the things they announced at the show. This goal, their goal is to have that many. The idea there being that there's going to be another billion people you can target. There are fewer people on the most popular version of Android. It's about 800 million people on Android KitKat. There are fewer people than that running the latest version of iOS 8. So that would be a bigger audience potentially, although arguably in 2 to 3 years things could change. That hasn't really helped Windows today. I mean, today overall Windows has 1.5 billion users, right? If you look at something like Windows 7, I'd have to look, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I want to say Windows 7 is roughly half that, about 750 million people. I mean, developers are not targeting Windows 7 with new apps. So the presence of users doesn't equate to you should be here. It does present an interesting big target. It's obviously a nice round number and all that kind of stuff. But just because people are using it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like a great place for developers to go. That hasn't followed on the Windows side in a while. And we've talked about this, the best, or I should say the most popular apps on Windows 8, Chrome and iTunes, which are other platforms. They're basically ways to get you off of Windows when you think about it. The other top 8 are utilities that make Windows 8 look like Windows 7. So not exactly like a rich ecosystem.
That's not good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not healthy. So, we'll see. I mean, I'm not trying to throw cold water on it, but I think we need to be a little realistic about what what the possibilities are there. We'll see.
Did they, as far as the feel that you got from the developers, how do they feel about something like this? Do they embrace it? Does this make their lives easier?
Yeah. So nobody was negative about it. I mean, I think that's important to say. I am not suggesting that this is, people are freaking out about this or it's bad in any way or whatever. I think the concern was just like, wow, it's really, people were kind of talking like, it's amazing. Like Microsoft's so different. They're embracing all this different stuff and they're acting very open and they're being very transparent. They're really making it, easy for, in this case, developers to get their stuff on the platform. It's kind of exciting, but I think the more you let it sink in and you get over the initial, kind of weirdness of it, it's like, well, pragmatically though, does this help? The other thing I feel like everything I say about it is like a little bit of a wet blanket, and I don't mean to be that way, but let's say you are the developer of an iOS app and it's really popular, and maybe you did the hard work to port it to Android, right? Which required you to either hire other developers or learn a new language, which wouldn't be all that difficult, but actually it would be if you were an Objective-C expert. It doesn't matter. But you learned a new language, you learned a new environment, Android Studio probably. Learn the intricacies of Android. You took the time to figure out how all those special things like notifications and yada yada work on the new platform. And you did all that work, And now Microsoft comes along and they say, hey, how about doing that again? It's not necessarily all that compelling, even though you could take your code base and transform it, in the case of iOS, into an Objective-C Visual Studio project. So you're still using the same language, but in a new environment, on a new platform, something new to learn. And now you're thinking, well, do I want to take advantage of unique Windows 10 features that would only work on that side of the fence? Maybe, maybe not. But you still, at the end of the day, have a third completely different thing that you have to support.
Yeah.
So as you update new features, as you add things, as people complain, as things don't work, you've now got 3 endpoints that are not, are basically completely different.
Yeah, I'm curious how this is going to.
That's a lot to ask.
And I'm curious how this is going to translate to. I mean, the phone we get it, right? The phone's going to make sense. But how about on desktop? How about these, modern apps running on desktop that are iOS ports?
Sure. I mean, so, if you have a phone app, it would be a lot of work to make it run on the desktop because you have to deal with the adaptability of the screen size and orientation, and whether it's windowed or full screen, whatever. If it's a tablet app, it's not as much work. It's already bigger, to begin with, and I'm sure there will be apps that restrict.
Functionality-wise, I mean, you think differently on a desktop than you would on a tablet. Oh. It's not as cut and dry as saying, okay.
But those are considerations.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the app. If it's a reading app or something, you get some of that stuff built in, the ability to scroll with a mouse wheel or whatever. You don't have to do anything to make that happen. It just works. And so a lot of it would just work. It depends on the app.
I mean, for games, this is going to be good. This is a positive as far as games go. For the big game developers to kind of get their stuff on their platform.
And that's right. So, and again, I'll just dump on yet another announcement. I mean, one of the things they announced at Build was that Candy Crush was in fact ported from the iOS version, and it's really exciting. It's really neat. And Candy Crush has been in the store now for 6 months or so. Some number of downloads, I don't remember the figure. Very, very highly rated.
That and Jetpack Joyride. That's
okay.
Those are the two.
Well, big success story, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Since doing that, however, the makers of Candy Crush have in fact completely rewritten the app on the Windows platform in C++ or whatever. Um, so they did do it, and it was successful, but they're moving to a new code base now. And so this is a company that has a lot of money and resources, obviously. Candy Crush is very successful. And so the good news is they will be making more Windows apps. They've talked about that, Windows games. The bad news, I don't know, bad news, but I guess the reality check here is, the big example they had is in fact moving away from this system anyway. So great. I don't know. It's 1.0 too. I mean, there's going to be stuff that doesn't work, and there are going to be app types that are going to be particularly difficult to move across. If you're an Android app and you take advantage of Google services, you got to plug in equivalent Microsoft to third-party services. That Google stuff's not going to work. How do you figure that stuff out? So it's not the complete wide open win that it sounded like at the first moment. But I've thrown a lot of kind of crap on top of it. I apologize for that, but I'm just trying to think through it logically. I mean, I think there are still questions, I guess.
No, obviously. What did we find out about development for Xbox? Did they
almost nothing?
Again,
So,
you know what?
I know.
We'll say it again. What is this, year 3?
Well,
I guess we'll wait for E3.
Okay. I have heard some things. I mean, so I think the general story is that getting an app on Xbox is going to be a lot easier than it used to be, but it's still not going to be the wide open express lane that you see like on Windows Phone. They want to ensure that those apps are curated, that they have a point, that they solve a problem. We don't need another like farting app or whatever. Like, we're not interested in that. Like, they want things that make sense on Xbox. And
it's not going to be like the Roku where anybody and everybody can develop and put up an app.
Yep. You'll have varying degrees of quality and so forth. So I think the good news there is that you won't need to buy a $100,000 dev kit and sign an NDA and all that kind of stuff.
I think Rob Greenlee told me the pricing on how much it was for media companies, like a Revision 3, for example, to get on the Xbox, and it was, I mean, I couldn't believe it.
Sure.
And my answer was, well, why? Why would they even do that?
This is what I'd like to see. I would like to see, Visual Studio Express for Xbox, right? C#, C++. People would be able to make games, of course, but maybe not more important, but also would be able to write apps, and that you could sit here with an Xbox next to you and it'd be tethered to your PC or whatever, and you could sit here in Visual Studio and make apps, see them run on the Xbox, right? They could be universal apps that would also run on the desktop here and on your phone, and you could sit here and just target these devices and work on them in real time, and then submit them and see what happens. But at least be able to run them on your own and just kind of do that. I don't understand why this thing is the locked box that it is.
I mean, it could just be just somebody doesn't think that people want to develop that way, or that's the right way to do it. It's still possibly that old school mentality where, viewing content on an Xbox, it's a premium device. Remember that whole thing? Why do you charge to view Netflix? Well, this is a premium experience. That whole blunder.
Well, it's not anymore.
It's not, but maybe it's still somewhat of that mentality where it's still a premium device and it's exclusive content and it's going to be closed for a while.
Look, they could have a little ghetto area of the store where it's like, homespun apps. And so, I mean, I just don't. If people want it, why not? We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Last week we made a joke out of this.
They weren't more explicit about this.
I'm actually a little surprised. I mean, we were joking about it, and in doing so, we were talking about, well, why don't they just put Windows 10 on this and give you the option to run this as a PC? I said it as a half-assed joke, kind of. Obviously, they're not going to do it. You know how many emails I got saying, Andrew, that makes so much sense. I would so much rather just have this as a PC, a mid-range PC just sitting there, and I could play my games and I could do everything else on here. It's gonna evolve into something like that, but it's not gonna be. You're not gonna run desktop on this thing. There's
not gonna be a desktop, but you could run the Word app for Windows 10, and you can attach a USB keyboard and a mouse, and it should work. I mean, there's no reason why that couldn't work. Hit OneDrive in the back end. That's where you would store your documents. I mean, there is absolutely no reason that couldn't work. Whether they will allow that or whether they see a need for that is kind of unclear.
I don't know. Do you think they see a need for that? I know the
No, they
idea
really don't.
is
They don't see a need for this.
well because it's still considered a living room device, right?
Right.
Yeah, until they start realizing that some people aren't using it in the living room, they're actually connecting it to a monitor.
Well, look, we're going to see the Edge web browser in there. Browsing the web opens up an arbitrary set of experiences, that you can't get in mobile apps, and so that's okay.
I mean, the future
Honestly,
of
I just don't
Xbox
understand
is
why not just open this up. I mean, especially since Microsoft has to curate the store experience anyway. I just think that this needs to be part of it. By the way, part of the silence here might be because of the schedule. One of the things they talked about at Build was that the Windows 10 release will be staggered, right? So the version we're getting in July or in the summer will be PCs.
Yeah.
Windows Phone will come after that. And then the other versions of Windows 10s for Xbox One, but also for HoloLens and for Surface Hub, Internet of Things, those things will occur. They don't have an exact schedule, but over some amount of time. And so it's possible that the Windows 10, migration for Xbox, maybe that's something they want to do after the holiday season, even just so they don't screw everything up.
Yeah, because they're talking about universal apps, but it's not going to be truly universal because you can't run it on an Xbox.
Yeah, but it will. I think it will get there over time.
Yeah, I'm hoping it does. I'm just surprised we got nothing out of it. HoloLens, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get any time with it?
Yes, I did.
And
really,
because you were so happy. You were so happy about it last time. You thought this thing was awesome.
So my experience was negative enough that I polled everyone I could that had experienced it, and I did not try to talk them into I'm going to say something and you could just nod your head and agree. I wanted them to say it without me prompting it. And what they all did say, because it's true, is that the field of vision was dramatically narrower than it was when we started in January.
Oh, that's interesting.
So what does that mean? In other words, if you're looking at like my part of the screen here and you can see like it's a square and you can see stuff around. In the January version, if there was a hologram sitting here on this thing,
it was like this.
If there was one on that side, the bin thing over there, you'd see it. If there's one over here on the desk, you would see it. If there was a hole in the door, that like a Minecraft looking hole with stalactites and stuff inside, you'd see it. But in the version that we have now with the kind of the shipping hardware with the actual glasses, right? Before, remember, it was a prototype, like kind of a monstrous octopus looking thing. The field of vision is small. And so like I'll try to approximate it on this screen, but let's say it's roughly right like that.
I mean, can we say that rather than it being like full screen like this is what the field of vision is? It's a smaller.
But what does that mean? In other words, what that means is you still see the world, right? I mean, because you see out through them. They're not blocking your view. You see the world. The world is the world, right? It's still there. You have peripheral vision and all that kind of stuff. But based on that field of view, the hologram that's here, you couldn't see it. The hole that is in the door, you could not see it because it's up on the wall higher than that thing I described. The bin, the one in the bin, you might see it, based on how wide it was. I don't quite think so, to be honest. But the one that's on the desk on this side, you would not see.
Until you turn around. Yeah.
Until you literally move your head, because you have to do this thing. You can't look up and down. You can't just look. You have to
move your head.
And so it's hard to explain how limiting that is. But here's how I'll describe it. I think that, two things I think that make sense to maybe will help people a little bit. If you played any of those DOS shooter games, the first ones, remember we talked about, I think we did a throwback on shooters, right?
Yeah.
Castle or Wolfenstein 3D.
Yeah.
And Doom in particular. Those two games, if you had a lower end PC, you could shrink the display of the game down into the middle.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? And then so it would run acceptably fast. And what was around that was just like blocks or some opaque color or whatever it was. And so you were looking through a little portal. So you'd be running around and you'd be doing stuff, but it was like a little tiny window in the middle of the screen. So it's like that, right? But the other way to think of it is one of the demos we did back in January is we stepped onto the surface of Mars, and it was immersive. There was no Mars occurred everywhere. It was
Everywhere.
up, down, around.
And you
It
didn't have
was
to move your head. You could just look
no,
side to
it
side
was
and you
it
could
was
see
there
it.
in all of the peripheral vision that you had. Mars existed in your view, and so when things happened in different parts, you saw it, and it was so immersive. It was like being on the surface of Mars. It was amazing. So, in its current implementation, it would not be like standing on the surface of Mars. It would be like looking through a tiny portal in a spaceship that landed on Mars.
Landed on Mars,
And all you
yeah.
could do is kind of see, through that little
That's
hole. So
disappointing.
even though Mars is all out here, you don't see it. All you see is this.
I mean, is it this way due to hardware limitations that the prototype did not have because it was a prototype?
They wouldn't say
nothing.
All I can tell you is, or one of the things I will tell you is that everyone complained.
Yeah.
So based on the feedback, especially the people who had it before, right? But actually, there's a few things I should say. I do think they're going to change it just based on the feedback.
Prior to it
Oddly
coming
enough,
out.
The thing they need to improve is like an up-down. They need to widen it this way. It sort of begs the question, why not? Since you're not going to walk around the world like Google Glasses anyway, and you're going to look like a jerk wearing these things. Who cares? I mean, why not make it like a blast welder's thing and have why not have like a full face mask? What's the difference? I think they're so concerned with making this thing look cool for consumers that they're sort of forgetting what the point is. But the other problem, and this is a big problem, is that they've done demos where there's a guy on stage and it looks like he's walking around talking to a robot, or he's like, hey, video screen, follow me. And he walks down the hall and everyone claps. Oh, that's so amazing. Yeah, except for one thing. When that thing's following you down the hall, you can't see it. All you can see is this little tiny thing like this.
You got to turn around to see. Yeah.
Yeah. The way that they promoted that, the way that they showed it off in the keynote, the more I thought about it, the more I realized is that it was not just disingenuous. It was a complete misrepresentation of the capabilities of the device. And it's dishonest. I mean,
because with the keynote, with what I saw watching the keynote, it was, there were these things were all around you. So like they would turn, right. They would just shift and it was there. It was sitting there before you would, get into that field of view.
All the stuff we did in January was immersive and amazing. The surface of Mars is, I think, an obvious one anyone can sort of imagine. The Minecraft room where there was a huge involved castle with parts that fell through the table, and there was a thing up on the wall where there was a hole the bats flew out of, and there was another castle up on the table. I mean, you stand there in the corner of the room, you could take it all in. It was all there. One of the things that does work very well, though, by the way, is the ability of a virtual object to latch on to a physical object and stay rock steady.
To sit there,
you kind of move around, it doesn't bobble. Like, it appears to really stay right where it is. Like, that stuff is amazing.
So is it that it's able to determine that there's an object there? Is that what it is? So when you decide where an object, okay, the surface mapping, okay.
So if you picture, like, I drop a virtual ball, it might hit the real table, bounce, hit the real keyboard, bounce, fall onto the floor, the real floor, bounce, right? But you could also have little virtual, like, hologram objects in the interim. So they could be like these things floating in space. It will also interact with those. And it's also, it's super steady and realistic and real seeming. It's well done.
I envision people just playing like full court basketball inside of their house.
There's no way.
Like eventually, like that's what it is.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
you get like these little things on your hands, so like you feel the ball when you're bouncing the ball.
Growing up as a kid, I used to play basketball, and I would wear glasses. And when you have glasses on, you can only see clearly through the front, but there's still a peripheral thing going on. So you have other senses, obviously, in sight, sound and so forth. But if somebody was moving over to the side, you would see them. But this would be like playing basketball, like blinders on. Like, it would be impossible. Like, you literally can't see.
Okay,
anything,
so I'm going to use
anything that holographic.
You're describing this, so I'm going to describe what I think it's like, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm blind as a bat, and I wear glasses. I wear contacts. So I bought a pair of glasses, and I wore them for the first time. And the thing about the glasses, they don't really sit right. So if I look up, I don't get it. It's blind. I'm blind. If I look sideways, I'm blind. So is it almost like that, where everything above and to the side is not there? I mean, the universals, the real world is there,
have to
but
sort of divide what you're seeing between the real world, which is always there,
yeah,
and the holographic world, which is only exists in this little thing.
Which you don't want it to divide.
I guess the
you want
difference
it to...
with real vision is even when you're blind, not actually literally blind, but like I also have terrible vision. So if I'm wearing glasses and I look up like you're saying, there's still a blurry something there. You know, I may not know that's the window in the wall, but I see dark blue and white, and because I see through the glasses, you make the connection and it works in your brain. The problem, with the hologram is like they're literally just gone. And so, for example, with that ball thing I was talking about, drop a ball, dunk, 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 down it goes. Where did it go? I mean, you have no it could be anywhere based on the physics of what just happened.
You have to actually move your entire head around to see it.
There's no indication where it went. I mean, it probably went down, but you have to, you spend a lot of time doing this thing where you're really looking for stuff. And it was really frustrating because the January event, I expected it to be stupid, and it was incredible. And so based on that, I thought, well, here we go. This is going to be even better. Why wouldn't it be better?
I'm curious if NASA's getting this, or they're getting what they displayed in January.
A lot of theories around that kind of thing. Like, is there going to be like a pro version that is that full face mask that I'm talking about? I guess my argument is like, why not just do that? I can't see too many
people buying this to begin with.
Yeah, like too many uses for such a limited thing,
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that this has specifically to do with hardware, CPU, GPU, issues.
Battery life, which by the way should also not be a concern. In fact, I think this is the thing. They desperately want this thing to be a cool consumer device you can stick on your head, wear it like glasses. Battery life,
But where are you going to wear this?
That's the thing. You don't wear it anywhere.
And for what?
You are going to sit in a room. That's where you use it, in a room.
At home, yeah.
Could be in an office. It could be in your house. Doesn't matter. You're not going anywhere. And so at that point, I say, well, okay, then why not have it be tethered?
Yeah.
What's the difference? Or at least optionally. Why not have a full face version? You're going to look like an idiot, but who cares?
Who cares? You're by yourself.
Anyway, you're using HoloLens. I mean, I don't understand. It's kind of arbitrary what they're doing. It's too bad.
So who is this being marketed to? Who will it be marketed to? Right. I have a lot of questions about this HoloLens, and I'm sorry if I'm boring the audience with it, but I'm really fascinated by it. One, what kind of hardware does it have? Two, what kind of hardware did the prototype, I guess, in January have? Three, who's buying it and how much?
Yep. Right. We don't know
nothing.
Almost any of that. I mean, we know some of their customers. I mean, NASA is obviously one of the companies. I think here's my
but like
guess.
Real people.
I don't think they should sell this in stores. I don't think this is something you should be able to walk into a store and buy. I think the disappointment factor would be so high. I just think it would be a huge mistake. I think what they need to do is have what I would call like a tailored buying experience where you're in some industry and you contact Microsoft, say, I'd really like to buy this thing. What do you think you're going to use it for? Okay. We will set you up with a partner who will deliver the software solution that you need and train you how to use it. And we'll come to your place physically and step you through it. I just don't think it's there as a consumer.
Yeah, and at that point, who cares?
Even as a gaming device, it's useless.
Who cares what it looks like at that point? Like if I'm General Motors, right? Let's say I'm General Motors, and we're coming up with a prototype for a car, which that is a great example on how to use this. You see, they have a chassis of a car, and they have a prototype, and they've designed it in whatever software that they're doing, and now they've made this car real on this chassis. So you could actually see, you walk around the car, you could see what it's going to look like. That's a real world experience, and I think that they would benefit from marketing that to somebody like that. But here's the thing. Actually, I would argue that for that kind of thing, one of those Surface Hub giant screen things, where you can sit there and scroll through architectural or engineering diagrams and find the exact part of the flange that does the thing. Yeah.
That kind of thing, I think would actually make more sense because, remember, this is about holograms. So, I mean, like where would the hologram come in? Like, what's the point of a hologram? Like, I could picture like an architectural thing where you could build hologram versions of new walls and furniture and stuff, and you could look at a room and say, this is what it could look like, and people, that's cool.
You know who should offer that? Like a Best Western. You go into some like Motel 6 and you put on these glasses, and now you're at the Ritz-Carlton.
Yes, right. Just make sure you wear these when you don't want to.
Yeah.
Do not take these off. You know,
Something like that. But that's not the reality of this device.
Sure. So I we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what their plans are.
Living in a tenement.
I'm a little freaked by, but the problem is with the tenement, you'd have this little strip that was awesome, and you'd see all the junk around it, and it would still stink. It would make it even worse because you would see both. You're not even fooled by it. You know,
you got a little taste of what's nice, and then they just take it away when you just look up a little bit.
So I've walked away from HoloLens, feeling like I thought I was going to feel in January. I'm just confused, and I don't understand what they're thinking.
What it is. That's interesting.
It's too bad.
Since we're on the topic of hardware, I want to talk about hardware. But before we do that, I want to remind everybody, after we record the show, we record another show called What the Talk, and that is exclusively available on patreon.com/whatthetech. If you fund our Patreon campaign, you get access to that. And it's Paul and I just hanging out for another, 35 minutes, just talking and just BSing, talking about whatever. I think we're going to do a Throwback Thursday today. A TBT, not the bald truth, guys. We're not doing the bald truth. It's a Throwback Thursday. And we're going to do that right after this. So if you're watching live, you can watch it totally for free. It's available to everybody. We don't shut up our stream. But if you want to catch it archived, or if you want to tip us and help us out, go to patreon.com/whatthetech. You can fund us anything you want, a quarter, a nickel, whatever it is. It's all accepted here. Patreon.com/whatthetech. Let's talk about hardware since we're on the topic. We kind of saw this. We're getting some information on and off. I don't know if it's coming from Microsoft as to new Lumia's coming down the pipe. Flagship phones. What's happening with this? Is there anything new other than just speculating?
No, it's mostly speculation. I mean, they didn't announce anything at the show or the shows, I guess. But we saw through the usage stats from AdDuplex, there's at least one new phone that's a flagship class phone testing. And then there's been rumors of something that we're calling for now the 940 and 940 XL, which appear to be updates for the Icon and the 930 on the one side, and then on the 1520 on the phablet side. What we don't know is whether, what, if any, and they probably will include some Windows 10 specific hardware features.
Are these renders real that
I don't know,
floated around?
Yeah, I don't know if those are real. But,
okay. Because they're pretty.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about a Windows, Lumia 930 or an Icon, which are identical phones, and then a 1520, which is like the phablet, those devices have essentially the same internals, right? But the big difference is the screen. Yeah. Obviously the phablet has the bigger screen. They have the same camera, 20 megapixel, pure view, same processor, et cetera, et cetera. So the 940 and 940 XL would follow that lead. They'll have, some kind of high-end Qualcomm processor, 3 gigs of RAM, I think was what they were saying, 32 gigs of storage with micro SD, 20 megapixel pure view camera again. So kind of the same camera class. So we'll see what improvements, if any, occur there. And then the difference would be the screens. And I think it was QHD resolution. So I think it's 2560 by 1440 or somewhere close to that. So it's much higher resolution.
Very high res, yeah.
Which is nice. It's about time. And then beyond that, it's, will it support, what kinds of Windows 10 features could it support? It could have optical, iris style scanning or face scanning for login. It could have some sort of, Touch ID type thing where you use a fingerprint swipe like you would on a Lenovo laptop or whatever.
I mean, it's about time, right? Yeah. It's time that this thing comes out. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at these sketches. Why does the Lumia 940 XL have a pen?
Have a what?
There's a pen with it.
Oh, a pen.
Like that's the stylus.
Well, okay. So one of the other things that these devices would support is that continuum for phone features, right? Which they showed off at Build. And what that allows you to do is use the phone with a second display. And of course, because it's Windows 10, it works with your typical Bluetooth-based peripherals. So you could walk into your home or your office with your phone and wirelessly or with a wire add a second display, 27, 30-inch, whatever. And then because you're running universal apps on the phone, even though you don't get a desktop, right? It doesn't turn it into a desktop system. I think a lot of people are confused by that. You can run the Office apps for Windows 10, which are on the phone, and they look like phone apps on the phone. But when you run them in this situation, they run full screen on the display,
Oh, interesting.
and now they fill out and they look like tablet apps.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because that's what they really are. I mean, it's so they adapt to the screen. There's a lot of confusion around this feature. I mean, the initial implementation is literally going to be 2 screens at once, so it's going to require a high-end device. You can always use the phone screen as a virtual keyboard and mouse, so you can use it for navigation. You can also use it to launch apps like you do normally on the phone.
Or you could get a keyboard and mouse. You got a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse.
Of course, but I mean, if you happen to watch, maybe you're giving a presentation, you don't want to connect anything, or they're just not there. You can still use that phone hardware for navigation, and it will display up on the big screen. So you can still do that.
So in the second screen, right? When you're sending it to a second screen, are you going to have mouse capabilities? Like how is that? So you're going to see the little cursor.
The little mouse cursor's up there. Yep.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. Now, what they're looking at doing post initial release is a version of that would look on that would work on lower end phones. And the way that would work would be screen duplication. Like, in other words, you still have 2 screens, but you wouldn't have like a controller type interface on the little phone. You just have a duplicate of the screen. And so it could still run full screen. You'd hold the phone landscape, whatever, and pop up the screen.
I mean, the possibilities, the future of this is endless, really.
Yeah.
I mean, that's technically, that's their one device, one everything.
The only issue is that you can't do it on current phones. So it does require new coming Qualcomm, Snapdragon processors.
Sure. I mean, you're going to need some horsepower with that.
Yep.
How about when they go to Intel? I mean, you got a Windows Phone with Intel.
Sure.
I could run Skype. I can run 32-bit Skype on. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
I can do the show from my phone if you want.
That's interesting. So they're probably looking at like an October release for these phones.
That's what I'm thinking. October, November. Yeah, just in keeping with how they've done things in the past.
Yeah. See, I'm now 100% getting a Windows Phone for my AT&T line because I've found an Android phone that actually works well. So I don't need a secondary Android phone at this point to kind of substitute the horribleness of my daily drivers. So now, I have a free line on AT&T that I would really like to have a Windows Phone on.
It's gonna be a while. I mean, you're still looking at it's almost 6 months there.
I could wait, Paul. I've waited long enough. I could wait a couple more months. It's interesting that October's a good time. I mean, October makes sense for them though. But you know what? Now you're getting into the iPhone time for a release.
Right. Well, what are they going to do? They can't release a Windows 8 one phone now. That'd be stupid.
Yeah. Rumors came out this week about I don't know if it's so much rumors. I don't know if you spoke about this. Xbox One owners getting DVR recording.
Yeah, I mean, so we know there's a TV tuner card coming from Microsoft.
Yeah.
You can use a third-party USB device today. But what I've been told by 2 people now is that, I should say, let me step back. It's only live TV right now. So you can pause live TV. You can do that, but you can't record it.
With the tuner that they have.
Yeah, the tuner. And this includes the one they have in Europe as well, which is Microsoft branded. So what I've been told by 2 sources is that they're going to be adding DVR capabilities. I don't know anything about the hardware, how it will be. Will it be USB? Will it be cable card? I don't know anything about that kind of stuff. But I just been told that DVR capabilities are coming.
I mean,
that would kind of, I think, close the
media center
circle, on this kind of capability, because live TV is okay. It's it's good. It's over the air, so that's kind of limiting. It's it's not perfect, but I think they're going to try to close the loop on that.
I mean, this is I wonder if this is to keep people happy that media center is officially dead. It's finished.
Oh yeah.
If this is their response to that. Yeah, I know a lot of people love it, but the only time that I've run Media Center in the last couple of years is every time my cat goes on my keyboard and somehow makes it appear.
Yeah.
That's
it.
It.
As Steven Sinofsky pointed out at the time, 3 years ago or whatever, the vast majority of Media Center runs were mistaken. Or someone just wanted to see what it was, and then when they saw what it was, never ran it.
They just left. DVR capabilities hopefully coming soon. Oh yeah, look, you're the source. I'm on some guy just sent me a link. It says source of tech blogger Paul Thurrott.
A tech blogger.
Tech blogger Paul Thurrott have said that the Xbox One will gain DVR functionality and specifically live TV recording this year.
Amazing. I trust that guy.
Sources of tech blogger Paul Thurrott.
Yep. Anonymous sources.
Anonymous sources. I don't know if it would be used. If they allow, I don't know how they would even do cable cards. If they put in a cable card in this thing, that's a great device.
Yeah, it would have to be some USB based box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or why don't the cable come? I mean, FiOS is on.
Or why not come out with a new version that has that stuff? Or
You could come out with a new version that has it. Or I mean, just use the IP services. Verizon now has, I think, 90 something channels on Xbox. Yep. All in HD, and sure. I recently used it at a friend's house, and it's great. That's all he uses. He has that in his extra room, and I mean, listen, it's like you're watching something on the internet. It's IP, it's IPTV.
I just,
but,
this. Look, these companies don't want this to happen, right? I mean, this is the big blocker. It's probably the reason. Well, there are probably two reasons it didn't happen right at launch. I mean, one is they really rushed this thing to market. They wanted to get it out right. They knew they had to get the video game part of it right. Actually, they didn't necessarily get that right either, but whatever. They rushed it to market. So that's one consideration. The other one, though, is these guys. Like, think about like a company like FiOS. Like what you're saying is, I pay for the FiOS service already. So what's the difference? I mean, they could just deliver it over IP. They're just a dumb box at that point. I can use my own DVR and everything. Well, I mean, the difference to them is
$8 a month for cable box rental.
Exactly. That's the difference. And that's pure profit for them at some point, right? If you stay with the service for a couple of years, I mean, that's just the money they're making every month now. And when you do a cable card type solution, like on a TiVo or something, you're still paying them, right, for cable card based access. I mean, so there's still some kind of a bill there associated with it, I would assume. You can't do that, I don't believe, with Xbox.
You're paying about $100 a month for the cable box rental. Right?
No.
No, $100 a year. I'm sorry, $100 a year.
Yeah, okay.
$100 a year to rent that cable box.
Right.
I can't imagine that box is more than $200.
And most people have multiple boxes.
And
right?
most people
will have one in every kid's room. They'll have like different rooms in the house that have TVs, whatever it is. That adds up, and that's their profit. I mean, I think that's where they make money. So the sort of argument, it's like, well, I'm already paying for the service. What's the difference? I mean, because you're not, I suppose would you be willing to pay the same fee but have it go through your Xbox?
I would be willing to pay $1.99. Charge me $1.99 to have online access anywhere whenever I want, and I'd be very happy to pay that.
Yeah. So the problem is now you have a company that is not the company providing the service that's controlling the experience. They're also commingling, and FiOS, Comcast, whatever you have, they're commingling that content with other content that you may now choose to use instead of their stuff, and it may cause you to realize over time you don't need to pay for their stuff. I mean, there's all these incentives for them not to work within the system.
And I'll give you a good example of that. I no longer watch anything on demand through the cable company.
Oh my God, it's the worst.
Okay, it's
because you don't
horrible.
like watching ads and that you can't skip over.
No, I'm not even against the ads. I'm
against all of it. You can't fast forward quickly. You can only go at like double speed or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's a nuisance, but it's the fact that it's available goes a long way for me. Yeah. What drives me nuts is the fact that they delete episodes.
Right.
So let's say I'm watching Scandal, right? Mm-hmm. I just came into the season. It's near the end of the season. It'll pick up at episode 6 and
so what's the theory? Why would they do that?
Because they
hate us. I guess what I'm saying is it them or is it the content providers? Because their deal is now we want you to go buy it somewhere.
I'm sure it's, I don't know. I'm sure it's both.
I mean, does FiOS sell these things?
No. I don't know. I don't know who's responsible for that.
Providers.
But ABC, I could go to ABC site and watch Scandal. From season 1.
But in that case, you're paying. You're seeing ads maybe, or there's some other way that they're making money. I think this is from the content creators. Honestly, it doesn't matter. The situation's terrible. I mean,
regardless,
it doesn't matter who's at fault. It's still terrible.
It's so bad that I will watch it on Hulu with the ads, or I'll watch it on ABC on demand, ABC's
right.
app on my Apple TV with the ads, because I just don't want to deal with the cable company's clunkiness of dealing with on-demand content. Right. And I just watch the news. That's about it. And wrestling and sports.
Yeah.
I'm probably consuming 5 hours of cable content, live cable content a week. Does that justify a $200 cable bill?
Actually, it's funny how your TV viewing habits change over time. When we were in Pennsylvania, I was talking to my sister and her husband and my other sister, and we were talking about TV shows, and, you should watch this, you should watch that, and everything. And what occurred to me was there is no mainstream sitcom comedy that's on network TV that I watch. There is not one.
Nothing.
I watch some half-hour comedy shows like Veep that's on
that's
HBO
right. Yeah.
or whatever. But that whole like must-see TV Thursday night thing, or like the various sitcom comedies are on TV. I don't even know what they are because I really don't watch any of them.
I'm trying to think what's on.
Like Modern Family or
no, I don't watch any of that.
No, I don't either. I don't even know what most of them are.
I mean, I there's a couple things that I watch, but I you know how I discovered them? Netflix. Always Sunny in Philadelphia, discovered on Netflix.
Yep, same thing.
A lot of these shows that I watch, I discovered on demand or online. It was not through, watching it live.
Right. Well, but it's interesting because this negates one of the advantages of having cable. Right. Yeah. If you're not doing this kind of stuff, it's funny because, when cable TV came around, I think network TV saw it as a problem for them. And now that's the way basically everyone consumes network TV. And now it's these premium channels like AMC, premium channels like HBO, and then these online services like Netflix, et cetera, that are kind of negating or becoming a problem.
But are people saying like, oh crap, Modern Family's on at 8, I got to get home?
I think there are people who do that, but I think
crazies.
Maybe they're in nursing homes. I don't know. I mean, I think some people do that.
I don't know anybody watching TV anymore like that, except if it's with live sport.
No, but you're young. I mean, you're.
But you know what? But you know what? I'll tell you something, Paul. We talk about the cable companies, how cable's dying and how cable's dead. And it's it's on its way out. That's the thing. Pay-per-view has been dead for years. People are saying how pay-per-view's dead. Pay-per-view's dead. This Pacquiao Mayweather fight, it generated over $480 million in pay-per-view revenue in buy rate. They're expecting a 4 million buy rate for this thing. That's unheard of. 4 million people paid, or over 4 million people paid $100 to watch this fight. And we're not talking about the bars. We're talking about individuals in the home.
Yeah.
So that's a great example of, guess what? Cable's not dead and pay-per-view's not dead, and people are still going to consume the content in these traditional ways if the content is there. It really comes down to, if you really want it bad enough, you're going to pay it. I mean, it's crazy. People paid $100. I know so many people that ordered this. People that said they weren't going to order it. Spend $100 on a pay-per-view.
This goes. I would never do that. I just don't understand. that.
Let me ask you this: if the World Series, if Boston was in the World Series, hopefully they won't be, but if they were in the World Series and it was on pay-per-view, would you order it?
If that was the only option.
If that was the only option, most likely, you probably have a viewing party.
Well, yes, okay, yes.
I
would, but okay. So first of all, the World Series potentially goes to 7 games, is at least 4 games, and none of those games could last 30 seconds and be over. Look, I know I'm dating myself, but I remember these Mike Tyson fights that were over before they started.
And people are paying.
Yeah, people paid
hand over fist. Yeah. I think it was like $40, $50 a fight back then.
Sure.
It just shows you if the content is there. The only other time that I was looking into this, because we talk about pay-per-views on the wrestling show because the pay-per-view business has kind of shifted and they've gone on demand to their own network. The Olympics in '92, a lot of people don't remember. They were on pay-per-view. NBC and Comcast teamed up because NBC had the rights to all the content and they didn't know what to do, so they had to make the money somehow on getting the rights to air, all these, almost every single event. So they put it on pay-per-view. They had like a triple. You paid $120 and you got it on, I think it was like a week. It was like a weekly thing you paid. And you got 3 channels of pay-per-view and it failed miserably. Nobody got it. I think they said something like 6,000 people ordered this thing for the Olympics. It failed because the content wasn't there. Nobody cared to watch the Olympics. Nobody wanted to watch, I don't know, some ridiculous Olympic sport from some ridiculous team that nobody cares about. It just shows you if the content is there, people will order it. If I've always wondered why these cable companies didn't do that for, season finales. I was always surprised. Not that they should, but I was always surprised that that's not like an approach that they took. Oh, you want to watch the season finale of Game of Thrones? Watch it on pay-per-view.
That's amazing. I think people would revolt against that kind of thing.
I don't know, Paul. They
You're
would
already paying for HBO. I mean, I'm paying for cable and paying for HBO. I'm not paying another level for Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
That's when Paul turns to torrent. Screw you, HBO.
Yeah. I mean, now that's an option, Yeah. I'm saying a couple years ago.
Back in the day, you'd buy a VHS tape on the corner of, 5th and whatever in
New
New York City. I mean,
some guy recorded and here you go.
Like literally sat there with a camera in front of his TV.
Yeah.
The
other advantage is that on demand is sometimes 1080i compared to 720p online. So the people like me that are crazy are still going to do it. But I don't even know how I got to this at this point. I have no idea how I ranted and raved about
Xbox One and DVR.
Oh, Xbox One, yeah.
It kind of spiraled out of control from there.
So to me, it's just to allow you to access this stuff online. Charge me $1.99 a month or $2.99 a month and let me have this everywhere I want and let me get everything.
Yeah, sure.
I don't. You know what
these
else
are
I'm
big
thinking?
Companies that don't trust each other, and that's the fundamental issue.
But just think about how much it's costing them to run these cables to each room, right? When you need cable and they bring out a guy here to your house to run a cable line.
Yeah.
How much money is that costing them? I'm sure it's costing them a lot more than it would to cost, for you to pay them.
I'm sure they think of all of their customers as little investments, that they spend some money up front to do that kind of stuff. And then people tend through inertia just to stay there, and then of course we all know that Fios in particular, but I'm sure Comcast does this as well, sort of silently raises the price of your service over time, and you find yourself a couple of years down the road spending $250 a month for TV somehow, and you don't know how that happened. That's when they start, reaping it. They're evil.
Yeah. All right, Paul, that's it for this week. Let's wrap it up. Go to our website, gfknetwork.com. Guys, subscribe to us wherever our podcasts are available. You can follow Paul at The Rot on Twitter. I'm at Andrew Zarian on Twitter. TheRot.com. All things Paul at The Rot. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of articles coming up next. Well, no, you're not, because you're going to be away.
So I'm going to try to, we'll see how it goes. I'm going to try to take the weekend off for the drive. And then,
so you're driving down, you're flying down tonight, and then you're driving up when? Immediately?
Yeah, Friday, Saturday into Sunday with my dad, and then from there home by myself, and we'll see how it goes.
Are you going to set up like a meerkat and just
Tuesday.
Live stream your journey?
It wouldn't be that compelling, but I'll put some pictures on Twitter.
Yeah. All right, guys. That's it for this week. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye for now.